When I called to ask about the wedding date, my daughter told me, "Mom, we already got married. We only invited the people who really matter. Just send the beach house keys and stop being so dramatic." I smiled, then hung up. 3 days later, I left a wedding gift at their front door. One that made her husband scream without stopping. If you're watching this, hit subscribe and tell me where you're tuning in from. Let me explain how things reached this point. Because it didn't start with that phone call. It began 2 years ago when my daughter Emily brought home Ryan for the very first time. I'm Linda, 65 years old, and until just 3 days ago I thought I knew my daughter. We used to talk every single day. She'd call me on her lunch break and we'd chat about everything: work gossip, the latest Netflix shows, her dating disasters. When she finally met Ryan, I was honestly thrilled. She deserved someone who truly valued her sharp mind and her big heart. "Mom, he's different," she told me that first night, practically glowing. "He really understands me." I'd made my famous lasagna, the one Emily had begged for since she was 12. Ryan walked in wearing an expensive suit, holding roses and complimenting my house. He was attractive, in that polished, too perfect kind of way that usually makes me suspicious. But Emily looked so happy, so I pushed those doubts aside. During dinner, he asked thoughtful questions about my nursing career, and he actually seemed interested in the stories I shared. He praised the lasagna, helped clear the table, even offered to do the dishes. Perfect gentleman behavior. So perfect it almost felt rehearsed. "Your mother raised an incredible daughter," he told Emily as he hugged me goodbye. "You must be so proud." And I was. Emily had a strong marketing career, owned her own condo, and never depended on anyone. She was independent, stubborn in a good way, and full of confidence. Everything I'd raised her to be. But that night something unsettled me. Maybe it was how Ryan spoke about her, like she was some prize he'd won. Or maybe it was how he mentioned my beachfront property 3 separate times during dinner. I own a little beach house in Myrtle Beach, a place that had been in my family for 15 years, where Emily and I spent every summer together. "He's really interested in our traditions," I told my sister Susan the next day. "That's sweet, Linda," she replied. "It means he wants to be part of the family." I wanted to believe that. I truly did. But something in Ryan's perfect smile reminded me of my ex-husband, Daniel, Emily's father. He had that same charm, that same ability to make you feel special, until the moment he decided you no longer mattered. Over the next few months, I watched Ryan quietly weave himself into every corner of Emily's life. He had opinions about her friends, her job, even her relationship with me. Our daily calls became weekly, then monthly, then almost never. "Ryan thinks I should focus more on our relationship," Emily explained when I asked why she'd grown so distant. "He says successful couples always put each other first." That should have been my first red flag. But I told myself I was being overprotective. Emily was 28, grown, capable of making her own choices. If she was happy, I should have been happy too. But then came the engagement party I wasn't invited to. I found out about it the same way strangers did, on Facebook. A picture of her left hand with a massive diamond ring, captioned, "He asked, I said yes. Can't wait to start forever together." 53 likes and more rolling in. Friends and coworkers filling the comments with congratulations. Not one single person asked where I was. I guess most of them just assumed I already knew. I sat there staring at that photo for 10 full minutes, my coffee going cold, trying to wrap my head around what I was seeing. My daughter was engaged, and I'd found out about it the same way strangers did, on social media. I called her right away. "Oh my God, Mom, I'm so sorry," Emily said, her voice breathless and excited. "It just happened last night. We got so caught up in the moment. Ryan surprised me at our favorite restaurant, then we went back to his place and called his parents. It got really late and I was going to call you this morning. I swear." "Congratulations, sweetheart," I said, forcing warmth into my tone. "Tell me everything." And she did. For 20 minutes straight, she gushed about the proposal, the ring, how romantic it all was, how Ryan's parents immediately started planning an engagement party at their country club, and how they were thinking of a spring wedding. "When's the engagement party?" I asked. There was a pause. "Next Saturday. It's going to be small, just immediate family and a few close friends." "Should I plan to drive down Friday night?" I asked. Another pause, longer this time. "Mom, about that. Ryan's family has very specific ideas about these events. His mother is really traditional and she's planned everything according to their customs. A cold weight settled in my stomach. What does that mean, Emily? It means, well, it's mostly for Ryan's side of the family and a few of our couple friends. It's not that you're not important. It's just, they have this way of doing things. And Ryan thinks it's better if we respect that. Ryan thinks. Everything had become about what Ryan thinks. I see, I said evenly. And what do you think? I think Ryan knows his family better than I do, and I want to start things off right with them. You understand, don't you? We'll do something special, just the three of us, soon. That was 6 months ago. We never did anything special, just the three of us. In fact, I'd only seen Ryan twice since then. And both times he was polite but distant, treating me more like Emily's elderly aunt he had to tolerate than the mother who'd raised her alone after her father walked out when she was 8. The wedding planning happened around me, not with me. Emily would drop little details in conversation. They'd found a venue, booked a photographer, picked the flowers. But when I offered to help or asked questions, I got vague responses. Ryan's handling most of it. Or, his mom has connections. 3 months ago, I asked about the date so I could request time off from my part-time job at the local library. We're thinking early October, Emily said. Probably the second weekend. Ryan's researching venues. That sounds lovely. October in Vermont is beautiful. Are you thinking of having it at the beach house? I could. Oh no, Mom. Ryan wants something more elegant. More sophisticated than a backyard beach wedding. The dismissal stung more than I expected. Emily had always loved our beach house. When she was little, she used to say she'd get married there someday, barefoot in the sand, fairy lights strung between the dunes. Of course, I said gently. Whatever makes you happy. But I wasn't invited to the venue tours. I wasn't asked about the guest list. I wasn't included in the dress shopping trips she posted about on Instagram, her future mother-in-law beaming beside her in every photo. I was being pushed to the sidelines, a spectator in my own daughter's life. The final blow came exactly 2 weeks ago. Emily called while I was reorganizing my linen closet. A mundane Tuesday evening task that will forever be burned into my memory as the moment everything changed. Mom, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be cool about it. Nothing good ever follows that sentence. Still, I took a deep breath, sat down on my bed and braced myself. What is it, sweetheart? Ryan's been reading a lot about family dynamics and healthy boundaries in marriage. He thinks it's really important we establish our independence as a couple right from the start. That familiar chill ran through me. What kind of independence? Well, he pointed out that I've always leaned on you emotionally. Like when I'm stressed or upset, I call you instead of working things out with him. He says that could cause problems in our marriage. Emily, talking to your mother when you're upset isn't unhealthy. It's normal. But is it? She pushed back. Ryan showed me articles about women who put their mothers first and how that ruins marriages. I don't want to be that wife, Mom. I closed my eyes. I knew exactly what this was. Ryan wasn't protecting her. He was isolating her. What does this mean in practice? I asked, though I already dreaded the answer. It means boundaries, less frequent contact, more space for Ryan and me to create our own traditions. She hesitated, then added, Ryan thinks it would be healthier if we spent the holidays with his family this year, just to break the pattern. The holidays. We had spent every single Christmas together since Daniel left. That was our tradition, our time. Emily would drive up from Boston on Christmas Eve, and we'd stay in pajamas until noon, sipping hot chocolate, opening presents like she was still 12 years old. I see. My voice came out strange, almost hollow. Anything else? Actually, yes. Ryan thinks. The beach house complicates things. My grip on the phone tightened. What about the beach house? Well, I always assumed I'd inherit it one day. But Ryan pointed out that creates pressure. He says he never really feels relaxed there because it's not ours, it's yours. And if something ever happened between us and you, we'd lose our vacation spot. Are you asking me to sign the house over to you? I asked flatly. Not exactly. Ryan just thinks it'd be better if we found our own place, somewhere that's really ours. He doesn't want to feel like you're scrutinizing him when we're supposed to be relaxing. Scrutiny from me, the woman who'd barely seen him all year. Emily, that house has been in our family for 15 years. It's where you learned to swim. It's where we made thousands of memories together. I know, Mom. And I treasure those memories. But I'm starting a new family with Ryan now. He needs to feel like we have our own special places. Our own special places. Places that didn't include me. I ended the call with promises to think about everything to respect their need for space. But inside I was already planning. Not revenge, not yet. But I was going to find out exactly who Ryan really was, and what he wanted from my daughter. It only took a week. A few careful internet searches and a couple of calls to Emily's old college friends. That was enough to piece together Ryan's pattern. Emily wasn't his first wealthy, naive girlfriend. There had been Jessica, whose family owned a successful restaurant chain. She too had been isolated from her family, until her father uncovered Ryan's gambling debts and called the wedding off. And before Jessica, there had been Lauren, the trust fund heiress Ryan had tried to exploit before her brothers stepped in. Ryan Walker wasn't just controlling. He was a predator, one who targeted intelligent, successful women with family money. And Emily, with her thriving career and the expectation of inheriting my beachfront property, was his latest mark. That's when I began planning my so-called wedding gift. The phone call that changed everything came 3 days ago on a Wednesday morning while I was trimming my roses. Emily's name lit up on my phone screen, and for a split second I felt that old surge of joy, before remembering how things stood between us now. "Hi, Mom." Her voice was flat, almost mechanical. "Hello, sweetheart. How are you? I'm calling to let you know that Ryan and I got married yesterday. Just a small ceremony. Immediate family and our closest friends." I stopped breathing. Yesterday? But I thought the wedding was in October. We decided to do something more intimate. Ryan felt like a big wedding was too much pressure, too commercial. We found this gorgeous spot in Nantucket and kept it simple. Simple and secret. "Congratulations," I managed to say. "I'm sure it was beautiful. It was perfect." Ryan's parents were there, his sister flew in from California, my friend Jessica was maid of honor, and Ryan's best friend Tom was the best man. The photographer captured some amazing shots. She listed the details like she was reading from a brochure, not describing the happiest day of her life. What struck me most was what she wasn't saying. "That sounds lovely, Emily. I'm happy for you. Thanks. Oh, and Mom, Ryan and I were wondering if you could send us the keys to the beach house. We'd love to spend our honeymoon there, since we didn't plan a proper trip." There was the real reason for the call. Not to share her joy, not to include me in this milestone, but to ask for the keys to property they already thought of as theirs. "The keys to the beach house," I repeated slowly. "Right. Ryan's really excited to see it. I've told him so much about it. He's especially interested in the renovations you've done, and the way the property value has gone up." Property value appreciation. How romantic. "Emily, when you say you got married yesterday, do you mean just a ceremony or legally married?" "Both. We got the license last week and the ceremony was yesterday." "Why?" "Just clarifying. And you didn't think to invite your mother to your wedding?" Pause. "Mom, please don't make this dramatic. It was Ryan's decision to keep it small. And after everything we talked about, boundaries, I thought you'd understand." "I understand perfectly." And I did. I understood my daughter had married a man who convinced her that cutting me out of her wedding was healthy. I understood that Ryan had succeeded in isolating Emily from the one person who might have protected her from him. "So you'll send the keys? We're planning to drive up Friday." "Of course, sweetheart. I'll make sure you get them." After I hung up, I sat in my garden for a long time staring at my roses, thinking about patterns. Ryan always followed patterns. He isolated women from their families, convinced them to hand over access to their assets, and then moved on when he'd drained enough, or when someone asked too many questions. But this time Ryan had made one fatal mistake. He thought I was just another helpless mother, someone who would quietly fade into the background while he erased me from my daughter's life. What Ryan failed to realize was this: when you back a woman into a corner and threaten the one thing she loves most, you awaken a side of her you'll wish you hadn't. I spent the rest of that day on the phone sending emails, pulling every string I could. By nightfall I had everything I needed. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about justice. My wedding gift to Ryan and Emily wasn't something they'd ever find on a registry. It was far more valuable. It was the gift of truth. And like all the best gifts, it was one that would keep on giving. Friday morning I drove to their apartment. The package I carried was wrapped in silver paper, tied with a neat white bow. Inside was a leather portfolio, carefully filled with documents I'd spent the past 72 hours assembling. Ryan was about to learn all about his new family connections. I set it down at their front door with a handwritten note. Congratulations on your marriage. Every new husband should know about his wife's family history. Love, Linda. Then I went home and waited. The call came at 2:17 p.m. Emily's number, but Ryan's voice ragged and furious. What the hell is wrong with you, you crazy old witch? How dare you send us this garbage? I set down my teacup gently. Hello, Ryan. I take it you opened your wedding gift. This isn't funny. This is harassment. I'm calling the police. I'm confused, dear, I said smoothly. What exactly would you report? That your mother-in-law gave you a wedding gift filled with public records and newspaper articles. Behind him I could hear Emily crying. Ryan, calm down. Let me talk to her. No. This woman is insane. She's trying to destroy our marriage before it even starts. I smiled to myself. Oh, Ryan. Surely you're not upset about me sharing a little family history. I thought you'd appreciate learning how deeply our families are connected. Because the truth was, in the middle of digging into Ryan's past, I had stumbled onto something remarkable. His grandfather, Richard Walker, had once been involved in a very messy business deal with my late husband, Daniel, back in 1987. A real estate project that went very, very wrong. The documents I'd placed in that portfolio laid it all out in black and white. How Richard and Daniel had partnered to build a shopping center, how Richard siphoned money from their joint accounts, how Daniel lost nearly everything, including his first marriage, because of Richard's theft. How Richard fled to Florida with more than $2 million, leaving Daniel bankrupt and drowning in lawsuits. But that wasn't the most shocking part. The final newspaper article from 1993 revealed that Richard Walker died in a car accident, but not before confessing on his deathbed. He told his grandson Ryan about the stolen money and where it was hidden. And Ryan, I discovered, had been quietly accessing those accounts for years. That's how he'd funded his lifestyle, his sharp suits, the flowers and champagne he used to dazzle women like Emily, without ever holding down a real job. Money that didn't belong to him at all. Money that legally belonged to Daniel's estate. And when Daniel passed away 3 years ago, that estate and everything tied to it belonged solely to his daughter, Emily. So I said calmly into the phone, I also included the contact information for the law firm that manages Daniel's estate. You may want to give them a call. They're very eager to speak with you, Ryan, about those offshore accounts your grandfather mentioned on his deathbed. Apparently, there's quite a bit of money that rightfully belongs to Emily. The screaming stopped cold. His voice dropped, thin with panic. You're lying. I never lie, dear. I'm a retired nurse. We're trained to be precise about facts. But don't just take my word for it. I'm sure your grandfather's lawyer down in Miami remembers you. Mr. Rodriguez has been very helpful in tracing the paper trail. In the background, I could hear Emily asking what I was talking about, what money I meant. Oh, and Ryan, I added smoothly, the beach house keys are in the portfolio too. Consider that part of my wedding gift. I'm sure you'll enjoy discussing your family's financial history while looking out at the ocean. Then I hung up and poured myself another cup of tea. The next few hours I knew were going to be very interesting. Emily called at 6:30 that evening. Her voice was hoarse from crying and Ryan was shouting in the background. Mom, what did you do? I was sitting on the porch watching the sunset, feeling more at peace than I had in months. I gave you both a wedding gift, sweetheart. Did you read through it? I read enough. Ryan says it's all lies, that you're trying to break us up. What do you think, Emily? There was a long silence. Then she whispered, I think I need you to explain some things. Did Ryan's grandfather really steal money from Dad? $2.3 million, I said evenly. That's what the bank records show. Your father spent years trying to recover it. But Richard Walker vanished. The stress of it all, the bankruptcy, the lawsuits, it pushed your father past his breaking point. That's a big part of why he left us when you were 8. He couldn't handle the ruin or the legal battles. Another pause. And Ryan knew about this money? I could hear Ryan's voice rising in the background, muffled but furious. The deathbed confession suggests he did. And the investigator I hired found proof. Ryan has been accessing those accounts for the past 5 years. That's how he's been living. Off money that legally belongs to your father's estate. That's impossible, Emily said quickly. Ryan has a consulting business. He told me he works with high-net-worth clients. My heart ached for her. Emily, when's the last time you actually saw Ryan work? When did he last take a call from a client, or show you a contract, or even attend a meeting? Silence. In the background, Ryan was demanding she hang up. The law firm wants to meet with you, sweetheart. As Daniel's heir, you're entitled to claim that money with interest. They estimate it's worth close to $4 million now. $4 million. Her voice was barely a whisper. Ryan married you 3 days after I hired the investigator. The timing seems rather convenient, don't you think? Now I could hear him clearly, shouting that I was jealous, that I was trying to ruin their marriage, that I couldn't stand to see her happy. Emily, I said gently, ask yourself this. If none of this is true, why is Ryan so angry? If his grandfather was innocent, wouldn't he want to clear his family's name? Wouldn't he want justice for what happened to your father? The line went quiet except for her breathing. There's something else, I said softly. The investigator also found proof of 2 previous engagements, I told her. Jessica Liu in 2019, and Lauren Hayes in 2021. Both ended the same way, once their families discovered Ryan's financial schemes. Both women had family money. Both were cut off from their support systems before the truth finally surfaced. Stop, Emily whispered. I have their contact information if you'd like to speak with them. I said stop. The line went dead. I set the phone down and looked out at the darkening sky. Tomorrow Emily would have to decide what she believed. Tomorrow she would face the choice between the man who had isolated her from everyone who loved her, and the truth that could finally set her free. But tonight, for the first time in 2 years, Ryan Walker was going to bed knowing his carefully constructed house of lies was collapsing around him. And I was going to sleep better than I had in months, because my daughter now had every piece of information she needed to make the right choice. The gift that keeps on giving, indeed. Emily didn't call back that night, or the next day. But on Sunday morning I opened my door and found her sitting on my front steps. She was still in the same clothes from Friday, her eyes swollen from crying, her hair tangled, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Tell me everything, she said. No hello. No hesitation. Just that. I made coffee and we sat at the kitchen table. The same table where she used to spread out her homework, where we'd planned her college applications, where we'd shared 1,000 little conversations about nothing and everything. But this time we were talking about how the man she married was a fraud. Ryan left yesterday, she said, staring down into her cup. He packed 2 suitcases and told me he needed time to think. He said you were poisoning our marriage with lies, and that if I chose to believe you over him, then maybe we weren't meant to be together. Classic manipulation. Give the victim an ultimatum that makes them feel responsible for the failure. Where did he go? I asked. I don't know. He shut off his phone. Her eyes lifted, brimming with tears. But Mom, I found something. From her purse she pulled out a manila folder. After Ryan left I went through his things, his laptop, his desk, everything. I found these. She spread a stack of printed emails across the table. They were exchanges between Ryan and someone named Marcus Webb, talking about the Walker inheritance and maintaining offshore accounts. The dates went back 2 years, long before he even met Emily. There's more, she said, her voice a little stronger now. I called Jessica Liu yesterday. The woman from your investigator's report. I raised an eyebrow. And what did she tell you? Everything. How Ryan cut her off from her family, convinced her to put him on her bank accounts, even had her write a will leaving him everything. Her father hired a detective, uncovered the pattern. When they confronted him, he vanished overnight. Emily pulled out her phone and slid it across to me. On the screen was a text thread. Jessica put me in touch with Lauren Hayes too. Same story, Mom. Exact same pattern. He hunts for women with money, wins their trust, isolates them, then gains access to their assets. I reached across the table and took her hand. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. She shook her head. Don't apologize. You tried to warn me and I refused to listen. I chose to believe a man I'd known for 2 years over the mother who raised me. Her eyes filled again and she wiped them with the back of her hand. Jessica told me something else, Emily said quietly. She said Ryan actually researched her family before that so-called accidental coffee shop meeting. He already knew about her family's restaurant business, her dad's financial issues, even the fact that she was an only child. The bumping into him moment? The spilled coffee on his expensive shirt? None of it was fate. It was staged. Emily had always believed it was destiny the day she ran into Ryan, how that little accident had sparked their first conversation. But fate, it turned out, had nothing to do with it. "What are you going to do?" I asked. She looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen since she was 12 years old, when she stood up to a school bully. Determined. Fierce. Ready for a fight. "I'm going to destroy him," she said simply. "But I'll need your help." For the first time in 2 years, my daughter was asking me for help instead of pushing me away. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I smiled with genuine happiness. "Tell me what you need." Our plan was beautifully simple. Ryan would come back eventually. Men like him always did, once they believed the storm had passed. He'd show up full of apologies, promise to change, maybe even claim he'd been confused, overwhelmed, misunderstood. He'd try to charm his way back into Emily's life, back into her accounts, back into his original plan. But when he returned, we would be ready. On Monday, Emily called the law firm and met with Daniel's estate attorney, Patricia Winters. The news was better than I could have imagined. Not only did Emily have a legal claim to the money Ryan's grandfather had stolen, but because Ryan had knowingly accessed those accounts, he could face criminal charges for conspiracy and money laundering. "The statute of limitations on the original theft has expired," Patricia explained gently. "But your husband's recent activity resets the legal clock. He's been receiving stolen property for years." Patricia connected Emily with a federal investigator who specialized in financial fraud, Agent Jennifer Lane. Agent Lane had already been tracking Ryan's pattern for months, compiling evidence from Jessica's and Lauren's families. "We've been waiting for the right opportunity to move forward," Agent Lane told us on a conference call. "Your situation provides the missing pieces. If you're willing to cooperate, we can set up a controlled operation." Emily didn't hesitate. She wanted Ryan held accountable, not just for what he'd done to her, but for Jessica, for Lauren, and for however many other women were out there. On Wednesday afternoon, Ryan finally reached out. Simple text. "Can we talk? I miss you. I'm ready to come home." Emily showed me the message. Should I respond? "Yes," I said firmly. "Tell him you miss him too. Tell him you're sorry for doubting him, that I was just jealous trying to cause trouble. Make him believe it." Her jaw clenched with anger as she typed, but her words were flawless, exactly the kind of ego-stroking Ryan thrived on. His reply came within minutes. He'd be home Friday evening. They could start fresh. Thursday morning, Agent Lane briefed us. "The apartment will be fully monitored. Emily, you'll wear a wire. Agents will be positioned nearby. All you need to do is get him to admit 2 things. That he knew about the stolen money, and that he married you to gain access to your inheritance." "And if he doesn't confess?" Emily asked. "Then we move forward with the financial evidence we already have," Lane said. "But a recorded confession would make the case ironclad, and allow us to pursue charges for his other victims." By Friday evening, the stage was set. Ryan was coming home. I sat in my living room, a book open in my lap, though I hadn't turned a page in an hour. My eyes kept drifting to my phone, waiting for updates. Agent Lane had given me a number to call if Emily needed help, though she assured me the apartment was secure and under full surveillance. At 7:43 p.m. my phone buzzed. A text from Emily, "He's here." At 8:15 another, "He brought flowers and wine." Playing the perfect husband. At 8:52 he's talking about a real honeymoon. Asking about my savings account for deposits. At 9:31, got him. He admitted he knew about the offshore accounts. FBI moving in now. I set down my phone and poured myself a glass of wine. Ryan Walker's predatory career was officially over. But I had a feeling the most satisfying part was still ahead. By Monday morning, the story was all over the local news. "Local man arrested in multi-state financial fraud scheme," read the headline in the Portland Press-Herald. They didn't mention Emily's name, calling her only the most recent victim. But Ryan's mugshot was front and center. He looked exactly like what he was, a con man whose polished charm had finally run out. Emily came over for lunch that day carrying Chinese takeout. She looked lighter than she had in months. "Agent Lane called this morning," she said as she unpacked cartons of lo mein and sweet and sour chicken. "Ryan's been formally charged with conspiracy, money laundering, and fraud across multiple states. His bail was set at $500,000. I nearly choked on my tea. $500,000? Apparently he's considered a flight risk, since he's got offshore accounts and a history of disappearing when things get messy. His parents can't afford it and his accounts are frozen. We ate in comfortable silence for a while before she set down her chopsticks. Mom, I need to ask you something. And I need you to be honest. I put mine down too. Of course. What is it? How long did you know? About Ryan's pattern. About what he was really after. For a moment I considered softening the truth. But Emily deserved honesty. I suspected something was off from the beginning. But I didn't have proof until about 3 months ago. That's when I hired the private investigator. Her brow furrowed. 3 months ago? Right around when I told you about the whole boundaries conversation. Yes. And you didn't warn me directly, because you knew I wouldn't believe you. I met her eyes. Would you have? She hesitated, then shook her head slowly. No. I would have thought you were jealous. Or trying to control me. He had me so convinced you were the problem. Her voice broke. I was so mean to you, Mom. I said awful things. I cut you out of my wedding because he told me it was healthy. Emily. No, let me finish. I chose a man I'd known for 2 years over the mother who sacrificed everything to raise me alone. I believed his idea of family instead of trusting my own experience. I'm so ashamed. I reached across the table and held her hand. Sweetheart, you were manipulated by an expert predator. That isn't your fault. But I should have seen through him, she whispered. I'm smart, educated, successful. How did I fall for it? Because those were the very qualities he targeted, I said gently. That's what made you shine, and that's exactly what drew him in. He found a strong, independent woman, I told her softly, and convinced her that strength was actually weakness. That's what predators do, sweetheart. They don't go after weak people. They go after people who have something they want. Emily squeezed my hand. How do I make this right between us? You already have, I said. You're here. You're safe. You're free. That's all I ever wanted. We finished our lunch, then spent the afternoon flipping through old photo albums. Emily pointed out summers at the beach house, asking me to retell stories she'd forgotten. Stories of sandcastles, bonfires, and long swims. It felt like we were rebuilding something brick by brick, piece by piece. That evening, as she was leaving, she paused at the door. Mom, there's going to be a civil trial. Agent Lane says the families of Ryan's other victims are filing a class action lawsuit to recover their losses. They want me to join them. Are you going to? I asked. She smiled. And for the first time in 2 years, it was the fierce, determined smile I remembered from her childhood. Oh, absolutely. I'm going to make sure Ryan Walker never hurts another woman again. That's my girl, I thought. Welcome back. The trial began 6 weeks later, and it was everything I hoped it would be. Patricia Winters had been right. Emily was entitled to nearly $4 million in recovered assets, plus interest and damages. But more importantly, the prosecution had built an airtight case that stripped away every layer of Ryan's deception. Jessica Liu flew in from Seattle to testify, confident and poised in a Navy suit. Lauren Hayes came up from New York, nervous but determined to see justice done. Together with Emily, they painted the portrait of a predator who had refined his methods through years of practice. I sat in the gallery every day watching my daughter testify with dignity and strength. She spoke about the isolation, the manipulation, the way Ryan had taught her to doubt her instincts and cut ties with her family. She stayed calm, steady, unshaken, even when the defense tried to rattle her. Ryan's attorney attempted to frame him as nothing more than a misguided young man who'd made mistakes, not a criminal mastermind. But that defense collapsed when Agent Lane presented her evidence. Detailed research Ryan had compiled on each of his victims, including surveillance photos of Emily taken weeks before their so-called accidental coffee shop meeting. The most devastating blow came from an unexpected witness. On the 3rd day of trial, the prosecution called Marcus Webb, the man Ryan had been emailing about the offshore accounts. He had been arrested as an accomplice and agreed to testify for a reduced sentence. Mr. Walker contacted me in 2018, Webb admitted. He wanted help accessing accounts his grandfather had hidden overseas. When I explained the legal complications, he told me he had a long-term plan to legitimize access. What did he mean by long-term plan? The prosecutor asked. He said he was going to marry someone with a legal claim to the money. He even showed me old newspaper articles about Daniel Thompson's financial collapse. He explained that Daniel's heir would be the rightful owner of the stolen funds. And once he gained access to that person's finances through marriage, he could claim the offshore money as community property. A silence swept over the courtroom. I watched Ryan's mask finally crack as the truth of his scheme unraveled before everyone. For the first time, I saw not the polished con man who'd stolen 2 years of my daughter's life, but the coward he had always been. Emily went pale at Marcus Webb's testimony. The prosecutor leaned forward. Did Mr. Walker ever discuss specific targets for this plan? Yes, Webb replied. He had identified 3 potential women, based on their family wealth and personal circumstances. He showed me their social media profiles and explained why each one would be vulnerable to his approach. Was one of those women Emily Thompson? Yes. He called her the ideal target. He said she was successful, but emotionally isolated after her father's abandonment. Close to her mother who owned valuable property. And inexperienced in relationships, easy to manipulate. I looked at Emily's face as she heard herself described not as a woman, not as a partner but as prey. The pain in her eyes was sharp, but underneath I saw something stronger. Rage. Pure, focused rage at the man who had studied her vulnerabilities like a predator stalks prey. Ryan's attorney objected again and again, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. The jury now understood this wasn't just a case of stolen money. This was a calculated, years-long plan to manipulate Emily into marriage so he could legally steal what belonged to her family. When Webb finally stepped down, Ryan seemed to shrink in his chair. His expensive suit, his polished charm, it all looked flimsy now, a cheap disguise for the small, pathetic criminal he had always been. The jury deliberated less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. The words echoed through the courtroom as Ryan Walker's carefully built world crumbled. Conspiracy, money laundering, fraud. And thanks to Webb's testimony, a new charge, criminal marriage fraud with intent to commit grand larceny. The judge sentenced him to 12 years in federal prison and ordered full restitution to every victim, over $8 million in damages and interest. Since Ryan had already blown through most of the money he stole, it meant he would leave prison with nothing, just as broken as the people he'd preyed on. At the sentencing, Emily delivered her victim impact statement. Her voice was steady, clear, and devastating. Ryan Walker didn't just steal money from me, she said, staring at him as he sat shackled at the defense table. He stole 2 years of my life. He stole my relationship with my mother. He stole my ability to trust my own judgment and my faith in love itself. He convinced me that the people who truly cared about me were the enemy, while he was planning to strip me of everything. She paused, gathered herself, and continued with steel in her voice. But here's what Ryan didn't understand about the women he targeted. We are not weak. We are not victims waiting to be exploited. We are strong, intelligent women who were deceived for a time by an expert liar. And when we saw the truth, we didn't just walk away. We fought back. Together. Ryan kept his eyes down, but I saw his shoulders tremble when Emily finished. I hope you spend every day of your sentence thinking about the lives you destroyed, and the women who were strong enough to rebuild them. After the hearing, we gathered outside the courthouse. Emily, Jessica, Lauren, Agent Lane, and me. The reporters swarmed, shoving microphones toward us, but we turned them away. This wasn't about headlines. It wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. Jessica hugged Emily tightly. Thank you for being brave enough to wear that wire. Without your recording, we might never have gotten a conviction. Lauren squeezed my hand. And thank you for not giving up on your daughter. If you hadn't dug into Ryan's past, he'd still be out there finding new victims, Agent Lane told us as she handed each of us her card. You've helped us stop a predator who might have hurt dozens more women. The Bureau appreciates your cooperation. But more importantly, you should be proud of your courage. As the crowd outside the courthouse slowly thinned, Emily and I walked to our cars in comfortable silence. Finally, she turned to me. Mom, I want to ask you something. What is it, sweetheart? She smiled, that beautiful smile I'd missed for 2 long years. Would you help me plan a real wedding? Someday when I find someone who actually deserves me. Someone who loves you too, because if a man can't appreciate my mother, then he's not worthy of me. Tears stung my eyes. I'd be honored. And Mom, she added softly, the beach house? I know Ryan made me say those awful things about it not being sophisticated enough. But the truth is, I've always dreamed of getting married there. Barefoot in the sand. Fairy lights strung between the dunes. Just like I used to imagine when I was little. It would be perfect, I whispered, hugging her tight. As we drove away from the courthouse, I thought about the woman I had raised. Emily had been lost for a time, deceived by a master manipulator who weaponized her kindness against her. But in the end, the strength I had seen in her since childhood had returned. She found her way back to herself. And back to me. Ryan Walker had made one fatal miscalculation. He believed isolating Emily from her family would make her dependent and weak. Instead, it only strengthened the bond between us. And when we reunited, our fury together was more devastating than anything he could have imagined. And if my story stayed with you, tap that like button and subscribe. It lets me know you're here and it helps this story reach the people who might need it most.